Within subjects factors, just tell us which variables represent each level. So for 1, it's abseil. For 2, it's bowls. For 3, it's meditation. You can also see in the descriptives that the mean and the standard deviations, what they are for each level of the independent variable, for both introverts and extroverts. You may want to examine these means and standard deviations to see what's going on. So here I can see that meditation was rated highest by extroverts and introverts, and that introverts gave a particularly high rating for meditation. Box's tests of equality of covariance matrices can be used to determine whether the data violate the assumption of homogeneity of covariance matrices. If Box's M is significant, the assumption has been violated. It's a very sensitive test, and it can be assessed by using an alpha of 0.001 or 0.001. In this example, the test is not significant. It has a sig value of 0.823, meaning that the assumption of homogeneity of covariance matrices has not been violated. Now, if Mauchly's tests of sphericity, if it's not significant, that is, the significance is above 0.05, then the assumption of sphericity has been met. Now in this example, Mauchly's test is 0.755 with a significance of 0.185. Since the sig value associated with the statistics is above 0.05, then the sphericity assumption is not violated. As a result, we can read the sphericity assumed rows of the tests of within subjects effects. If the sphericity assumption is violated, the degrees of freedom for the repeated measures ANOVA should be adjusted by multiplying them by one of the 3 epsilons in the table that you see. Now, if you never have to do this, as SPSS does all the heavy lifting for you. So in practical terms, if the sphericity assumption is violated, you need to read and report the results of one of the epsilon adjusted tests on the next table, rather than sphericity assumed. Now this table looks like a horrible table, but we don't have to worry about too many of these rows. This shows that the results of the repeated measures part of the ANOVA with the corrected F values. The output is split into sections that refer to each of the effects and the error associated with each of these effects. Now, because Mauchly's test was not significant, in other words, the sphericity assumption was not violated, we can use the results for sphericity assumed. Now, looking at the main effective activity, we can see that the F ratio is 6.934. And as you can see, it's significant with a sig value of 0.004, which is less than our alpha level of 0.05. So consequently, we can conclude that some activities scored significantly different from other activities. In other words, there's a difference somewhere among the different types of activity conditions. What we don't know is where the difference in enjoyment is. Is it abseiling that's enjoyed more than lawn bowls? Is lawn bowls and meditation significantly different? Or is it meditation and abseiling? Now, the partial eta squared is a measure of effect size. Now, it can be interpreted as the proportion in the enjoyment scores that can be attributed to the independent variable of activity. Here, the partial eta squared is 0.348, meaning that the type of activity accounts for 34.8% of the variance in enjoyment scores. Looking at the interaction effect between personality and activity, we can see that the F ratio is 2.350. Now, as you can see, it's not significant with a sig value of 0.115, which is more than the alpha level of 0.05. So consequently, we can conclude that there is no interaction between personality and activity on the enjoyment ratings of those activities. So note that we chose sphericity assumed in this example because we found a non-significant Mauchly statistic. If we had found a significant Mauchly statistic, you'd be faced with the question of which adjusted degrees of freedom do I use? So I'll talk more about this later in the lecture. Now, the main effect of personality is listed separately from the repeated measures effects in the table called tests of between subjects effects. Before looking at this table, it's firstly quite important to check the homogeneity of variance assumption, which is done with the Levine's test. So SPSS does an homogeneity of variance test for extroverts and for introverts for the activity of abseiling. It does another one, another homogeneity test or homogeneity of variance test for extroverts and introverts for the activity of lawn bowls. And then it does another homogeneity of variance test for extroverts and introverts for the activity of meditation. So what we can see here is that they're all not significant. So the assumption of homogeneity of variance has been met for the two between subjects groups of introverts and extroverts on each of the three activities. ANOVA is not particularly sensitive to violations of equal variances when the sample sizes are moderate to large and of equal numbers. So when designing your study, unlike this one, aim to have relatively equal groups. So here is a main effect of personality. It has a significance value of 0.460. Thus, the main effect for personality is not significant. So what do we know at this moment? What we know is that there's a significant main effect for activity. We also know that there's a non-significant main effect for personality. And we also know that there's a non-significant interaction effect for personality by activity. But what we don't know is where the difference in enjoyment is on the main effect of activity. Is it between abseiling and lawn bowls? Is it between lawn bowls and meditation? Or is it between meditation and abseiling? To do this, we need to go to pairwise comparisons that we requested in SPSS. Now, as the main effect for activity was statistically significant, it's useful to determine specifically which activities are different from which. The Shiddak post hoc results show which activities differed from which. Now, the mean difference column shows the value of the I column mean to the left minus the J column mean. Where there's an asterisk beside the mean difference, the two means are significantly different. Now, this will be supported by the sig value and a 95% confidence interval. Remember too that these tables are a little confusing as they also double up. Now, the asterisks tell us there are significant differences. So what we can see here is that students rated meditation as significantly more enjoyable than abseiling. But differences between abseiling and lawn bowls and meditation did not achieve statistical significance. Now, the Shiddak comparison show meditation rated as significantly more enjoyable than abseiling, but no other difference among the activities. Now, I've gone through a mixed ANOVA without an interaction effect, without a significant interaction effect. Please see your text for how best to write up your results in APA format.